All right. All right. We are officially live with Best Ball Brawl. I've got my boy Randall Ledet Jr. Joining me today. Welcome, Randall.
Let's go. We're live. Best ball brawl. 5 weeks from CFB. Glad to be on with the Fantasy Picasso himself.
Fantasy Picasso on X. That's right. Yeah, let me paint you a picture, baby. How you gonna win in your fantasy leagues? Today we are doing the College Best Bowl on Underdog. This is super cool. Best ball is a growing part of fantasy football, and it was only a matter of time until they started dabbling into the college landscape and making best ball for college football. So we're going to enter a best ball mania tournament today. We're going to start. Randall is an expert in college.
Expert is definitely a flattering way to describe just an obsessive college football fan, but we'll take it.
I'll call it what it is. This man knows a lot more about college football than me. I got my guys that I like in college football, but Randall really understands like the conferences, the matchups, the offenses that are going to be explosive, right? The defenses that they're going to have to play against that might be tough. So he's going to bring a lot of that college football knowledge. I'm going to sprinkle in some of the best ball knowledge, right? Like building a good roster construction, being aware of who your playoff matchups are, right? I've got a playoff cheat sheet we're going to be looking at. Well, let's get into it without
Yeah,
further
let's
ado.
let's do it. I was thinking, Johnny, Fantasy Picasso, for the crowd or for the audience and for any future listeners, maybe we explain what best ball is, like
Yes,
how
I like
how it
that.
works.
Okay, I like that. So I am going to share my screen and we are going to go
Go full
to
work.
best bowl. Yeah, can you see my screen, Mr.
Right.
Sayo? Best Bowl Mania. We're gonna put in $10, right? And we're gonna go up against 11,000 other people, and for a shot at $100,000 in prizes. And you're gonna build a lineup, and you're gonna pick about 20 people on your team, and every week you need to field a quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a super flex, and a flex, and a tight end. And once you draft your lineup, it is done for the season. You don't need to set your lineups week to week. They take the top scorers from your entire roster that you build and they automatically plug them into your lineup. So we're going to look for guys with tons of upside in this format because again, if maybe one week they score 10 points and then the next week they don't, then someone else will. But you want someone who's going to score 30 points on any given week so that they're in your lineup. College, there's a lot of explosive offenses. So I think this is going to be super fun. What I missed, Randall? You got
I think
any?
I think I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's kind of like a litmus test, a constant when you think about best ball versus fantasy football for the pros. You have to pick all of your players early in the season, and there's no waiver wire or substitution, right? So it requires kind of a really good ability to be able to predict who is going to be good this year based off last year's stats, but also who's going to be good this year based off of forecast or projected workload they're going to receive at receiver, running back, and the other positions. But there's no substitutions throughout the year, so really got to do your research. And then, as you mentioned before, we're going to look at the conference schedules and the non-conference schedules because each week you're going to be having a total score, and the games that your teams are playing in and who they're playing against is going to play a key role in terms of how much time or burn your key players are going to get. So I think we're looking at it. I think it's week 14, rivalry week. Ohio State plays Michigan, so that'll probably be the last week of the season for best ball.
Yep.
So chances are there's a lot on the line. That could lead to players like Trayvon Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins getting more carries and more higher stats for those type of games compared to other games. But
Yeah.
I would say at the most you've hit everything on the head. I think you covered it pretty well, and it should be a fun one.
Yeah. So There's some interesting kind of developments to your point. We talked about this before the show, like a lot of movement in college football. So many players went pro with the COVID years and stuff like that. So a lot of younger guys, a lot of lesser known guys kind of high on the list in terms of the fantasy rankings. So what we're looking at here before we get into the draft is the average draft positions of every player. And remember, in Superflex, you can start 2 quarterbacks, but guys like Ollie Gordon and Tet McMillan are still going above the QB1, Dylan Gabriel, because they're going to score almost 20, 30 points every week in fantasy. So,
Yeah, I mean, guys like McMillan, if Arizona is going to win games this year like they did last year, like he's going to have to contribute like at least 80 yards, not even necessarily a touchdown per game, but at least 80 to 100 yards. He finished top 5 in receiving yards last year. So makes sense why he's a top 5 pick here.
Who's your 101?
My 101, I look at this very much like fantasy football, where the value comes from dual threat quarterbacks who can get yards in the air and the ground, running backs who get consistent touches, preferably not splitting carries, and then top receivers like your Marvin Harrisons from last year, just game changers, Luther Burdens. If I was going to pick a number 1 quarterback or number 1 player, I would go with Dylan Gabriel. Transferred from Oklahoma to Oregon this year. 5-year starter. Like his game fits that offense so well. I mean, I see him being a dual threat guy and getting you 2-3 touchdowns a game.
Wow. Okay. So you like Dylan Gabriel. I do think, the Ollie Gordon, like as good as he is for sure, he kind of developed a lot of steam at the end of the year. And he was relatively quiet at the beginning of the year. And so I don't know. I don't want to call it a flash in a pan or anything like that. But I kind of like everything you said. It just feels like that is such a blue chip to build a solid roster around, especially where in Superflex quarterback is king. So I thought it was really interesting. I think at one point Gabriel was above McMillan, but Ollie's pretty steadily been the 101. But I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I really like Omarion Hampton. Really like obviously everybody's going to love all of these names at the top of this list. What do you think about this Nico guy from Tennessee?
Yeah, Nico looks really impressive. 5-star plus recruit. He's going into his sophomore year this year. He was able to get in the Outback Bowl against Iowa, if I remember correctly. And he showed out. I think he had like 2 touchdowns. He looks really good. Everyone in Knoxville is really excited for him. So I think he'll do really well. Their schedule's pretty tough. So I think they're playing Oklahoma this year. They're playing Auburn, some really tough defenses. So that's where talent, upside versus competition. This is where I would look at sometimes those
week 13 against UTEP, week 14 against Vanderbilt, though. But week 12 against Georgia. So, but if you can make that get you past Georgia, those are some. I'm pretty sure some decent matchups.
If they're going into that Georgia game, with only 1 or 2 losses, let's say 2 losses, he's going to be putting up numbers against UTEP because they're going to want to help inflate their ratings for the CFP poll. So that's good. I mean, he's probably going to have good stats. And then against Georgia, I mean, that's a tough defense. I think they're playing in Knoxville too. I mean, it could be a good one. It could be a good one for sure.
Yeah, well, just to your point, that's a super interesting thing to think about along the way when you go through these players. I like to almost before I make any pick, like who are they facing when it matters, right? When it's time to win the money. And in general, do you have any conferences? We talked about this a little bit that you're thinking are especially fruitful, maybe like the PAC conference because they've got a less. Oregon's going to put up a lot of points.
Yeah, well, For the listeners here, just like not to slam dunk on you. So the Pac-12 is dead, right? So now it's the Pac-2. So it's just Washington State and Oregon State. So with the realignment, the big pieces to remember for the realignment is, so for the SEC, Oklahoma and Texas joined. For the Big Ten, big shift, right? Oregon and Washington, as well as USC and UCLA. So to your question about the conferences that I would pay the most attention to, I would be looking at the Big 12 and the SEC. I think the Big 10 probably has more talented players than the Big 12, but the Big 12 is a higher offensive conference. The Big 10 kind of has that ground and pound defense, historically speaking, conference. So I would be looking at SEC and I would be looking at Big 12. And that makes sense, right? If you kind of look at even just like Heisman and some of these awards that are coming out for preseason, they feature Shador from Colorado, quarterback, Big 12 guy. They feature Noah Fafita for Arizona, Big 12 quarterback. Obviously, McMillan, who's receiver, Big 12 receiver. Devin Neal is in these first 1 to 3 round, biggest bet thing, and he's the running back for Kansas. And then from the SEC side, Carson Beck, Graham Mertz, both quarterbacks, Florida as well as Georgia. So those are the two conferences that I would probably key in on. Additionally, with the Big 12, because the conference is so balanced and so even, a lot of teams are going to be in it at the end of the season. Your Utahs, your Kansases, your Kansas States, your Iowa States, Oklahoma State with Ollie Gordon. That's going to bode to more offensive production and just higher stakes games.
Look at this. Him in you got a bye in the playoffs if you pick Ollie Gordon with that first pick, but then you get Texas Tech and Colorado.
That's your Super Bowl. That's your Super Bowl, right? Like that's what Shador said at Big 12 Media Days, where everyone's Super Bowl, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Colorado's so arrogant." It's like, no, they get the most eyes on that game, and everybody goes to Colorado with a point to prove. They want to beat that ass. So,
I don't know, man.
I think Gordon's going to go in there ready to work.
400. Yeah, that game. That is not a good defense.
It's not a good defense either. That's not a good defense at all. They've made some changes in the portal, but you don't know until you see it on the field.
Yeah. It's really good stuff, man. I love hearing some of your knowledge there. And yeah, so I didn't even. So wait, could you run me through the Pac-12 again? It's the Pac-2. Who's even?
So the Pac-12 is dead. So it's just now there's only 2 teams left. So Oregon State and Washington State were the 2 schools that were unable to relocate to a Power 4 home.
Okay.
With the conference contractual agreement, they're able to stay in this Pac-2 for 2 more years. And so they agreed to play like a partial Mountain West schedule this year regionally. So that's going to be your Boise States, your UNLVs, or University of Nevada, Las Vegas, your Nevadas, and those in that world, San Diego State. But the Pac no longer exists. It's the Pac-2, and that's just where they are. So the other schools that we didn't mention in realignment that were part of the Pac-12 were Stanford and Cal, who were able to relocate to the geographically aligned conference of the Atlantic Coast Conference, or the ACC.
Okay, man. Wow.
It's chaotic.
College football expert, Randall Ledet Jr., everybody.
Ledet is crazy. It makes me sound like I'm fast. I got some wheels. But what's crazier is that you have the conference realignment. That was a lot of shifting this year. Then you have the portal, right? So in the past, you were only, if you were a transfer, you had to sit out a year. The portal's been around for about 4 or 5 years now, but if you were to transfer, you had to sit out a year. So usually transfers were guys who weren't really getting playing time or weren't getting burned. But now with the portal, where you don't have to give up a year of eligibility, if you're like a top player, you're going to get in the portal and go play at a better school, or say you're a 4-year starter and you think a scheme fits your pro abilities better and you kind of want to show off more to the pros, you might pull a Dylan Gabriel and go from Oklahoma, where you were doing well, and it's a Power 4 school, now in the SEC, to Oregon, where it's more of a high-speed offense, kind of fits your kind of run-pass option play style better. And Oregon's obviously always produced good quarterbacks. But the portal is a big difference. A lot of quarterbacks who were good last year on good teams made changes, right? So Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina went to NC State. Dylan Gabriel, of course, going from Oklahoma to Oregon. KJ Jefferson, another dual threat, 1 yard touchdown merchant, went from Arkansas to University of Central Florida, or UCF. So the portal plays a big role.
Now you might remember this guy, maybe heard of him or not. Dylan Edwards.
Yes, former running back for Colorado last year, entered the portal this year. He's back home at Kansas State.
Yeah, I don't have all the answers. They don't have him on Underdog, and they do have Kansas State players. So, like, they do have DJ Giddens. I think he's going to be their RB2. Maybe it's something about, like, going through the transfer process or something that it's not finalized. But I think
potentially, because he would be a guy that I would expect. He's a speedster. He's really quick. He's so fast. So he carried the majority of the carries last year at Colorado. I mean, the only reason he left was because Colorado was actively recruiting an Ohio State transfer running back. And I think he just wasn't really as happy in Colorado as being back home in Kansas.
Right. Well, yeah, again, a guy who I think, he's explosive. And those are the types of guys I like to target who've got some to them, right? So give me one or two of your guys. Who else are you like, who do you think there's some value on potentially in this college football landscape?
Yeah, if I was to think like who is there some value, I would look at someone like Kobe Hudson. He's a receiver for UCF. So UCF the last couple of years has been producing NFL receivers, right? And they usually have a pretty big play guy. They run a speed offense with Gus Malzahn over in Orlando. So Kobe Hudson, I think he's going to a senior year. Coming off a pretty good season last year. I think he's like projected around like the 70th overall pick, I want to say.
Yeah, ADP is 76 here.
But so I would keep an eye on him. Because, and now he's got last year they had John Miles Plumlee at quarterback, who's not bad. He's an Ole Miss backup transfer, starting transfer, but what became a backup because Jackson Dart now started at Ole Miss. So he was good last year with Kobe Hudson, but KJ Jefferson is an overall better quarterback. I expect him to help increase Kobe Hudson's production, and I can see him kind of being the under radar second team Big 12 receiver.
Yeah, he's almost 900, or he had 900 yards exactly last year, 8 touchdowns with Javon Baker there, right?
Yeah.
Dude, was he throwing passes to Treylon Burks?
He probably. Are we talking about Plumlee?
No, KJ Jefferson. Didn't he go to Arkansas?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Burks went to Arkansas. Yeah. I guess.
I'm just saying. I think he has propped up a fantasy relevant wide receiver or two in his day with that offense. So yeah, we'll see what I like that. Anyone else that I love? That's a great call out. That's exactly who I'm looking for. Guys who are not, consensus top 10 guys or whatever.
Yeah. But I think Zachariah Branch, we were talking about him earlier this week. Number one, he's from USC. Kick return guy, punt return guy. I want guys who are on the field. The best ability is availability. So the more opportunities to touch the ball, the more opportunities to be an explosive guy. And that's Zachariah Branch. I think he had about 3 or 4 special teams touchdowns last year. He's a big play guy. Probably had over 5 50-plus yard plays last year. He's coming off a very strong freshman year, so he's poised.
Yeah, he's only a sophomore.
He's poised for elite. Those are the guys where it's like, what are you climbing for this year? Are you climbing for that NFL status? Are you climbing to get that bigger NIL bag? Are
Come on,
you
talk that
are you
talk, bro.
are you going for a redemption year? Like if you're Jaden Daniels, everybody's like, hey, you can't stay healthy. Or Jason Daniels or Jalen Daniels from Kansas quarterback, you can't stay healthy. Everybody keeps saying you're the top quarterback in the Big 12. Show me. Let's see the stats, you know. But Zachariah Branson's one of those guys at receiver that I really like. And
damn, he was a 5-star, 99 overall recruit, number 1 wide receiver.
they had a deep receiving core last year. I mean, obviously, there could be a drop off with having Caleb Williams ultimately passing to you, but now it's different.
Yeah, you got Miller Moss though, right? Who's lighting it up a little bit. So
yeah, he played well against Louisville last year, or they played well against Louisville last year in the bowl game.
Well, cool. Zachariah Branch, ADP of 85. You called out Kobe Hudson, who had an ADP in the 70s. So, just kind of talking out loud, sometimes that makes me think like, all right, maybe there's some value to be had in the later parts of the draft at wide receiver, right? And, prioritizing quarterbacks like Dylan Gabriel, who could really be a difference maker in a high-powered offense like Oregon. So you start thinking about kind of how you're going to construct that team. I love it, dude. Let's get into it, and we're
let's
talk.
We got to talk running backs too.
We don't have all the knowledge, but we're gonna start. Okay. You want to talk running backs for maybe 2 or 3?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say let's start this draft.
Let's do it. Give me 1 second. My laptop is dying, so I'm going to put it on the charger.
What do you know about Luke Lachey? We're taking just a little pause here. My man Randall is getting his internet situation.
We're good, man. I had to get it charged up, so we're good.
He's ready. Okay.
He's ready. He's locked in. He's locked in. That's what the kids are saying these days. He's locked in. All right. Who is Pat Mayo?
I don't know. That was for golf, I think. We're going to get 30 seconds a pick, halfway full, so you can still get in here if you're watching and you're like, what the heck is this? Over 2,000 people or almost 1,800 people are going to win money, at least win their money back. But we're going for that first place, $20K. And again,
for the viewers or future current viewers, I mean, when does this close? Does it close the start of the season?
Right at the beginning of the season. But the thing is, it's 46% full, and that's over the course of a week. So you assume we've got about one more week till it fills.
Okay, gotcha. So this
we'll do more tournaments, but we want to do this now before. For sure.
There's a cap, so that's a good point. So if you're watching, you're interested in doing this, you got about a week according to the Fantasy Picasso. I would hop on it.
Oh my gosh, we do not offer CFP draft in Missouri. Holy crap! Wow. Well, that sucks because, as my boy Jeremiah Retzliff says, there was some good discussion here. We were ready to get into some.
We were warmed up here. We were definitely cooking.
I didn't expect that. I mean, Missouri, like there's a freaking there's a casino every 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, it's hard it's so hard to kind of figure out where and what is legal gambling wise. Like in Georgia, where I live, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, for people listening again. I think like draft picks is legal here, and FanDuel is but it's counted as like fantasy, but then gambling's not legal. It's almost like a
Let me in. Damn. That is wild, bro. I'm gonna reach out to Underdog. It says if you think it's a mistake, then reach out to our support team. You bet.
This is a whole mistake. This is a mistake. It's a mistake.
You're like, no, it's technically isn't a mistake. I'm like, well, I feel like it is. Like you've hurt my heart.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's probably good anyways, because we've burned the listeners' eardrums for 30 minutes. But let us close out. I like what you said. Let's talk about the running backs for a minute. I think we talked about some of your favorite
Yeah. So I mean, because the positions are what? Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end.
Yeah, that's what you're building your fantasy line.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know you can bucket it a couple different ways, right? Like we can come on here and tell you, hey, draft Ollie Gordon, draft Devin Neal. Like those are the known guys. Like those are your preseason all conference, preseason, all American guys. Like those are the obvious ones. But it's like, where is, to your point, is that value? Who is the guy that is poised for a breakout year or is in the right situation now that he's transferred to a different team? You know? So it's it's gonna be a fun season. And there's some running backs that definitely that catch my attention. Running back that I really like is Damian Williams from Miami.
Yeah.
So he is my Damian Martinez. So Damian transferred from Oregon State. So Oregon State's head coach got hired by Michigan State. Whenever coaches leave, most players go into the portal. He decided to not follow his coach to Michigan State in East Lansing. He went to Miami. Money bag you, as some would say, right? He was about top 10 in yards last year, so I think he's gonna have a really good season this year with Cam Ward. They both can run, so I think just the dual threat aspect is huge. So I would be really keen on him.
Yeah, almost 1,200 yards on just under 200 carries, so averaging 6 yards a carry. What's he going to be? It looks like going to be a junior.
Yep.
So a younger guy with some juice. I'm actually not that hip on him, so but that's why I love listening to this, kind of hearing you call out some of the guys you see a path for. You know, it's always interesting too to think about, like, I'm not sure, maybe you can shed light on this. Is there a big depth chart there? Like, is he really going to have a bell cow role, do you think? Or did they have a decent running back that didn't transfer and now it might be a two-headed monster? Because that matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Miami always has a pretty deep depth chart when it comes to running backs, but usually if you transfer in, like if you're like the main, we'll say Hayes Fawcett graphic, like that, like fried visual of like you've committed, you're going to get the majority of the touches. And so I would expect him to be an every down back, get third down carries. So he's gonna be the main guy. He's gonna tote the rock. If there's one thing that Mario Cristobal has done, it is run the ball in Miami as a coach. And so I expect him to get even more production than he had last year at Oregon State.
So I see there's a full 10-point ADP difference where people are 10 points or 10 spots higher on Donovan Edwards. When I watched Edwards last year, I kind of saw him running into the backs of his blockers a little bit. Like I questioned his vision just a bit. He has some explosiveness for sure, but I'm just curious, like, seems like pretty easily people will pick Edwards over Martinez, but do you feel that way? Or do you think that there could be, because you're higher on a guy like Martinez, you might almost have him in that same?
No. I would pick Edwards over Martinez. It's number one, I mean, not in no order. He's on the cover of EA CFB 25, right? He paired well last year with Blake Corum, and it looks like they really didn't skip a beat when Donovan Edwards came in. The new head coach at Michigan is Sharon Moore. He's an offensive line guru, former offensive line coach. So if there's one thing that Michigan does well is they recruit at O-line, they block. They ran the ball 40 straight times against Penn State last year. and just completely controlled the line of scrimmage. So I expect the same amount of production, or the same type of workload for Donovan this year, and not having to split that with Blake Corum. So I'm actually really hot on Donovan Edwards.
Yeah, man. I don't know. 100, almost under 500 rush yards last year.
But he's splitting carries with Blake Corum now.
Right, but he was down to 4 yards a carry when he was as a sophomore. He had 7.1 yards a carry. So there's just again, these things happen, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, that was 1 year. Who gives a shit? But like,
in devil's advocate, probably had less carries when he was averaging 7.1 yards than when he was averaging 4 yards.
No, he had more. He had 140 carries as a sophomore, only 119 last year. But devil's advocate is that in the championship, he had 6 carries for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? So came on hot at the end of the year. I don't know, man. I don't want to overspeak, but I was curious to hear your thoughts on him. And it's cool that you're high on him. I think that's where you start to really be able to like make winning in between the margins, right? Of like,
yeah,
I'm going to pick that guy instead of that guy, even though everyone else is on that guy, So
exactly. I mean, I wouldn't condemn someone if they picked Damian Martinez over Donovan Edwards. I just think even with the new quarterback play at Michigan, like they're going to rely on the run a lot. Like just that's their brand, and they have a new quarterback, kind of like a nice safety blanket. I don't see. It would be like a shock if he had a down season. Like I don't think he's going to have a Heisman season, but I'd be surprised if he had less than like 1,000 yards.
I wonder who the second running back is at Michigan. It looks like it's Khalil Mullings in terms of ADP, but he's not going till the very end. This is just something where I'm thinking out loud here. I'm like, there might be some value there in actually taking the backup because then like that's 100 carries. I almost guarantee it based on how much now I don't know if they're going to change their script completely, but that was a running football team. To your point, their guy being an offensive line guru, like they probably continue with that philosophy of like winning in the trenches. And so, yeah, I think people are pushing Donovan in the top 30 because they know that he's going to get the rock a lot. But again, sometimes so is RB2, right? Like, especially if Donovan goes down, then there's a ton of contingent upside there. So,
yeah. Other running backs that I like in addition to Donovan would be we'll go to the SEC. Raheem Sanders at South Carolina. Rocket.
He had a lot of hype last year. Where is he? He's going in at pick 120, bro. That is actually kind of wild to me because like he was like their team when he was. I think he had some injury issues last year, right, or something.
Yeah, I think he had some injury issues last year. But he's a bruiser, heavier guy. Not as big as RJ Harvey, but he's pretty big. RJ Harvey is going to be in your neck of the woods at some point.
What do you mean?
He plays for UCF, so he's started running back for UCF. He's about like 260. It's got like a Brandon Jacobs New York Giants for anybody who's early 2000s. Bill, he's another one who's like later in terms of the best bowl draft prospects.
No, dude, Harvey was up there, bro. And Harvey had 16 touchdowns last year. Where's Harvey? Yeah, that's not bad, right? I mean, that's but again, 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns last year makes sense. And then, but that is crazy to think about Raheem at pick 127. 2 years ago, he had 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns as a sophomore. So I love that call out as a guy with a lot of juice and that after the 100s. Montrell Johnson, I believe, is a pretty stoutly that RB1 in Florida. There's not a ton of competition behind him from what I understand.
Okay.
Jaden Blue is a kind of my guy. I called him out to you the other day. Like now he's got who is it? CJ Baxter ahead of him at Texas. But I'll just call it what it is. I think Baxter's upside will be capped a little bit because Jaden Blue has so much juice on the bench. I think they could both be really good, but it sucks when you have two really good players both in the same running back room because they eat away at both each other's upside.
Definitely. Yeah, it's like a Darren McFadden, Felix Jones thing, like back in Arkansas, or like Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown at Auburn way back in the day. The committee system it seems to be a thing that schools are picking up on more. I mean, for the players, they can preserve their production for the league if that's what their aspirations take them to. But for fantasy people and our pockets, it's kind of like we prefer the guys who are down for sure.
What do you think of Ches Malusi, dude?
I couldn't even tell you who that is.
Oh, never mind. That's a different guy than I thought it was. I'm thinking of Skedabo. Do you know who Skedabo is?
Yeah. He's pretty solid.
Where's he?
I don't know where he would be going draft wise, but
Cam Skedabo, pick 70, or Skedabo. This guy is kind of wild, right? Like, wasn't he like a walk-on or something?
Yeah. I mean, didn't Cody Schrader walked on too, didn't he, at Missouri?
Right. No, I mean, that's why I'm asking. I'm like, sometimes these guys freaking go nuts, and they're almost are a value because like people are like, oh, well, he's like kind of looks a little clunky out there and whatever, but it's like, yeah, he had 1,300 yards as a sophomore, right? And last year it seems not quite as good of a year, but he's kind of their workhorse, or at least was when I was watching in some of the games last year.
And him staying says a lot, right? He must believe in what Arizona State's trying to do, or the NIL check cleared and it was good enough, or a combination.
Yeah, he does get some love out there because, like I said, he's kind of like a local,
He's a Tempe, Tempe Queen Creek guy. So. No, he's a good pick. That's what's beautiful about Best Bowl is that you can, like, there's no surprises in the NFL. Like, there's surprises like the Tank Dells and the new players in the draft, but like, there's only 32 teams. College football, it's like, what about Arizona State? They got this guy who puts up 90 yards a game. Let's give him a look. And then is Arizona State are they putting together a good competitive team this year? Because if they're putting together a good competitive team, then that's most likely going to boost his stats.
Right. What do we got here? We got a period from this guy. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
I mean, if there's any live questions for myself.
Yes. I was going to say, while you have Randall's expertise.
Oh, my God. I'm not an expert.
Questions, bring them into the chat. We're going to wrap up here in the next few minutes. A couple things I want to call out. Chip Trainum going to 75th overall. I'm like, dude, I swear I've heard that name for like 6 years. I have. He's been playing for Ohio State since like 2020, and he's never gotten more than 402 rushing yards in a season. Now he is transferred to Kentucky Wildcats and his ADP of 75. I feel like that's a little rich for my boy Chip.
A good player. They're kind of compiling this like super transfer team. Like, hear me out. Like, I think they had like a top 10 transfer class. They got the 5-star quarterback from Georgia, backup Brock Vandergraaf, who transferred in. And then they have this guy. They have some other players. So the ultimate litmus test for the season is, what does Brock Vandergraaf do? Like, if he's good, that's going to help the run game. That's going to help this guy. If he's just regular, he doesn't live up to the 5-star hype. Like, I never want to pray on anybody's downfall, but if he doesn't live up to the hype, then I think that's going to drastically affect this guy's performance.
Brock Vandagriff, 233. Maybe a little value there, dude. That's the very, very end of drafts. Do you think he's going to be their starting quarterback?
He's projected to be their starting quarterback. He could be. We don't know. We truly don't know because we've never seen him play. But I was listening to Andy Staples this past week, and what's interesting is that the Lincoln Riley was recruiting Brock Vandergraaf and Caleb Williams to be either one of them to be a starting quarterback. So The joke is, does that make Brock Vandergraaf Caleb Williams? No, because if he was, he would have started over Carson Beck. But he has a lot of talent. A lot of coaches saw a lot in him for him to get at Georgia to stay on the roster and to get a more or less another SEC starting job. So he's got a lot of upside. We just don't know. What would make me higher on Brock would be if he would have ended up in a situation like a Washington, just a team with a little bit more
Slinging it, just a vertical offense type thing.
vertical offense, just a little more success, right? Kentucky's like really good. They usually win 7 to 9 games a year, but they lose the games to ranked teams, or they'll lose. They're like 2-28 in their last like 32 games against teams with winning records, ending the season. So like they got to get past their own personal hump, which is ultimately a byproduct of how good their players that they're putting on the field are, for lack of better words.
So shifting gears a little bit, last people I want to call out on running backs are these two, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. I like Singleton a lot. Like back when I used to watch him, like the past couple of years, but last year, Katron Allen was really eating into his workload. 172 carries, 900 yards. This is really a committee situation, in my opinion, and one of those examples of where like Singleton's value kind of gets eaten into a lot more because of a guy like Katron Allen. Again, I don't think it. I think it's pretty cut and dry that Singleton's the better back, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that running back room.
Yeah, it's they both offer different things. Like Katron's more of a speed guy, Nicholas is more like a power guy.
Right.
I think like it goes back to the theme of one of the themes of this show today is the committee system. It's a safe if you got to put a roster of 25 guys, they're both safe picks. Penn State's going to be competing for the playoff. They're going to be a top 4 team in the Big Ten. Those guys are going to get their points. Like they're going to get at least 40, 50 yards, or they're going to have 100, 120 yard, 1 to 2 touchdown game. Like I think what it looked like when you watched Penn State was that they're feeding the hot hand.
Yeah.
So I think you can't go wrong either way. It's kind of it's a very loose example, but like a Sonny Michel, Nick Chubb. Like they're both NFL caliber guys. They're both good running backs. One is obviously better than the other, but if you have to, just because Singleton might be better doesn't mean that Caden Allen's not going to have better games.
Right. Yeah, no, good call. Pretty juicy playoff schedule for them. Penn State, you got Minnesota and Maryland as the last 2 weeks, so not terrible.
Yeah, not bad. Penn State got a really good draw. Another fact about college football this year, a lot of the teams, because of the conference size, got rid of divisions. So the joke with the Big Ten and the SEC was like the Georgias and the Wisconsins were playing the SEC, or in Iowa were playing like the Big Ten East schedule, or the Big Ten West. The Big Ten West was like Nebraska, Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, just like the garbage of the Big Ten, right? They don't compete for anything. Minnesota, they don't compete for anything. Now there's no divisions, so there's a random schedule each year designed by the conference, and so Penn State got lucky. Their schedule's pretty favorable. Like they're playing. They're not playing the entire Big Ten East like they usually do. I don't think they're playing. I think they're playing Ohio State and Michigan. It's not off the top of my head, but they're not playing. They're not playing Oregon. I think they're going to play Washington instead. So their schedule's pretty favorable. They should make the playoffs. If the season ended last year with where they were ranking wise, they would have made the playoffs in the new format. So.
What about Drew Aller, though, dude? Like, I mean, this is not a vote of confidence, right? 191 ADP is like, that's the bottom, that's the end of the draft. Like this guy's not getting drafted. And this is two quarterback league. Like this is a pretty, I guess it's because they are more of a ground and pound team.
Yeah, Drew Aller is not, he's not Drew Aller. I think Drew Aller's good. I don't think that for major production points, he's your guy.
No. Well, I just thought it was funny that how low his ADP is, and I think a team is only as good as their quarterback at a certain point. And yeah, I watched one of his spring games not too long ago, and it was absolutely brutal. Like he couldn't play football for shit.
Yeah.
Dude, it's kind of funny too, seeing Julian Fleming as a Nittany Lion. That'll be cool, right? Like this guy was so hyped up at one point and never had more than 550 yards with Ohio State, but maybe he balls out this year.
I think that was just his role. His role at Ohio State with Marvin Harrison being there and Trayvon Henderson. Like he was their two guy, but I think with Penn State he'll have a more dominant role. He's back home in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I kind of like it. Wheels up for Fleming as like your kind of last pick. Like, was it? I'm gonna look it up just to make sure I'm not tripping, but I'm almost sure he was like a very highly touted kind of 5-star guy coming out, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just kind of fun. You're like, man, maybe I get the ghost of Julian Fleming as my last pick of the draft and see if like Davy Jones,
Yeah, scroll through some of the last players in the draft.
Oh, he was only 100 an overall rating as a prospect, number 1 wide receiver when he came out. So this guy was like sorry. What were you asking, sir?
No, I was gonna say like we could wrap up maybe, but like I'd love to see kind of where they have players ranked at the end. Like who's at the end and like maybe like who's worth taking a flyer on.
Wait, okay, yes, but we gotta show some love to the tight ends. We can do very abridged version here. Loveland is a dog, right? As I understand it. This Lachey guy is a dog.
Lachey, yeah. I mean, you can never go wrong with an Iowa tight end.
Right.
They're always going to produce NFL tight ends. So I like Oscar Delp for Georgia a lot. They also got another major transfer from Stanford, Georgia, to tight end. He's going to put up some good production, but Oscar Delp is pretty hot on.
Wait, who's that? Oscar Delp from Georgia. Okay,
Yep.
this is the name. Got it. Justin Jolly, I believe, is pretty good. Anyways, just kind of fun, right? There's money to be made here if you hit on the like Dallin Holkers of the world, right? Well, again, they don't even have Colorado State in this draft pool, but let's see what we got in the chat. Audric Estimate. What the hell does he have to do with anything? That is now he is no longer in college. I don't think we've talked about Notre Dame for like the past 5 or 10 minutes. And anyways, Audric Estimate, everybody. Okay, let's do what you wanted, Randall, and let's go kind of deep at the end and see if there's any names that you really kind of see that you like. So we're starting to get kind of, I think the ADP ends around like 240, I want to say. Yeah. So anyone from without that ADP is basically not getting drafted at all. So let's go up around like.
Yeah, I saw they put Arch on the list. That's funny.
Arch Manning.
So can you only pick 2 quarterbacks, or can you have more than 2 quarterbacks?
No, yeah, you can pick way more than 2 quarterbacks.
Gotcha. So it'll count. So say you have 3 quarterbacks on your team, 2 quarterback scores, the 2 highest quarterback scores will count for that week.
Right. Unless someone else like a wide receiver scores higher than the 2 quarterbacks, then the wide receiver would go in the super flex instead.
Okay, so it's 1 quarterback, super flex. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then if I was drafting for the super flex spot, I would try to load up on a couple of dual threat quarterbacks. I mean, I went to University of Houston, so I'm a Houston guy. I saw Donovan Smith was ranked higher than Quinn Ewers on some of the
Donovan Smith going at pick 124. So that's your guys' no doubt starter, right? And he is a bit of a dual threat.
He started last year. It's weird. So he like didn't. I'm nice. I don't want to say he played bad. He probably played. I would give him like a C+ rating last year. He showed some flashes of like looking really good. They almost beat Texas. I think he had 3 touchdowns that game. But they have him as a first round grade projection. Obviously, these things first round grade NFL, right? These things change. But he's 6'6". He's mobile. I think people are expecting him to kind of like lean more into that dual threat side, just given how big he is. And Houston probably will be playing down a lot, so he's gonna have to pass. So he could be a decent flyer. I think there's better quarterbacks like that are available to take that are in winning teams, but there is an aspect of getting those guys on teams that are always playing from behind because you know they're gonna have to pass.
Yeah, this is an explosive, like Houston, right back to the days of Case Keenum, right? They've always lit up scoreboards. 22 passing touchdowns last year, 6 rushing touchdowns, 428 rushing yards. So I love this call out. This guy has used his legs. He even had a receiving touchdown last year, apparently.
Yeah.
He catch 28 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, it seems like there's some upside there to your point, like dual threat ability. I feel like that 124 ADP is probably pretty palatable based on what we just went through. You know what I mean? You've got a guy with pretty light competition. I also, again, we kind of called this out, and we'll just kind of say closing thoughts here. Shador, 26 at Heisman Watch seems interesting. Cam Ward seems like an interesting value. Jalen Daniels seems like an interesting value. And then Miller Moss seems kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
And,
I don't want to touch Miller Moss,
Smith,
man.
dude. Huh?
Miller Moss, I think he could be good. I worry about that. Like I think he's gonna be good. That's why I picked Zach Bridge, but I'm a little bit worried about that Big Ten transition. You're gonna be playing much tougher defenses now.
Interesting. Listen to that, people. Take that away. Your USCs of the past are no longer playing nothing but shit defenses. Like it does take a bit to wrap your mind around, right?
Yeah.
I
think they're
again,
playing Iowa.
I'm like, okay, whoever's in the Pac-12, fucking light it up, and you're like, no. Like, now they have been brought into a more, a larger group with teams that actually have defenses. So,
and just the travel, the time, like these are like the black swans, if you will. If you listen to Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, talks about the unknowns when it comes to negotiating. So the black swan is an unknown when it comes to negotiating. So the black swan, it's unknown but unknown, and its a factor is like USC. They're going to have probably the most travel time out of any team in the country because most of their teams are in the Midwest and Northeast time zone.
Ooh,
I think they're playing 1 week. They're playing Rutgers. It's like a 10 p.m. Eastern starting time. I want to say, or no, it might be 11 p.m. Eastern starting time, which actually probably would affect Rutgers more. But still, it's late. It just still throws you off,
You heard it here live from our expert Randall Ledet Jr. Fade every USC player besides Zach.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
We're cool with Zachariah Branch, but all of the other guys are going to be fucking toast from traveling around so much. So, dude, you crushed it, bro. You absolutely crushed it in terms of bringing some really solid advice for this format. It sucks we didn't get to run one today, but I am going to fight for the state of Missouri, and I'm going to get in this college best bowl draft one way or another. I'll just fucking go across the state line to Illinois real quick if I have to. I am going to run a college best bowl draft. I'm going to find a way, especially now that I've got all this knowledge from our college football expert, Randall Ledet Jr. Randall, what do you got? What do you got? Say goodbye to the people. Say your piece. Tell them where they can find you. Tell them what you are working on that they should be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I hope everyone that is tuning in now or tunes in the future and never tunes in enjoys this. You can find me on Twitter. I'm usually pretty active, tweeting about random college football, college basketball, NBA, NFL. It's Randeezy70 is my Twitter handle. Hoping to potentially start a podcast here soon in the fall. So stay tuned.
Let's go. Tell them more about the podcast real quick, man.
I mean, it's just a work in progress. Like once it drops, it drops. We're gonna have hopefully some really good participants come on, or guests as we call them. We got some good play on some things going on in college football. Right now, it's in stealth mode, but we got some things working. It should be good.
It's going to be on the SEC, correct?
Yep.
Randeezy70, everybody. That is his X at Twitter at whatever.
Yeah. If you enjoy Yaponomics, random quote tweets of me partially shitting on players and teams or propping up and boosting up players and teams, like have at it.
Bro, they know what they're getting. They just heard it. They just heard it for 50 minutes. They're getting gold. They're getting extra
gold nuggets. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, hey, this gives me more time to hop back on college football 25.
Oh yeah.
I think I stayed up last night till 3 a.m. playing my Louisiana Tech dynasty. We are finally ranked number 23. We are projected to get the 12 seed, Conference USA champs. We took 2 losses in the non-conference, but our goals never changed. We lost 2 non-conference games. We beat Tulane. We've run the table in the Conference USA, and we're looking at a potential playoff berth. This is the start of a beautiful Louisiana Tech Bulldogs dynasty.
Awesome, brother. I will be on some college football myself, and thank you everyone for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to the page. Follow me on X at Fantasy Picasso. I'm going to be doing more best ball drafts, best ball strategy episodes all season. So thank you for watching, and take care, everyone.
All right. Easy, y'all.